Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone. Let me introduce myself. My name is Rafli Rhamadani, NPM 2011040138. I'm from class PBI 6A. So now I will present about error analysis and scope. The first is, what is an error? An error is a form in learner language that is inaccurate, meaning it is different from the forms used by competent speakers of the target language. For example, a learner of Spanish might say, Juana es bueno, which is not what competent speaker of Spanish would say. The accurate form should be buena. The next, what is error analysis? Error analysis is a method used to document the errors that appear in learner language, determine whether those errors are systematic, and if possible, explain what caused them. Native speakers of the target language who listen to learner language probably find learners' error very noticeable. Although, as we shall see, accuracy is just one feature of learner language. While native speakers make unsystematic performance error, like slip of the tongue, from time to time. Second, language learners make more errors, and often one that non-native speakers even makes. An error analysis should focus on errors that are systematic violations of patterns in the input to which the learners have been exposed. Such errors tell us something about the learner's interlanguage or underlying knowledge of the rules of the language being learned. Corder 1981. The next is how to do an error analysis. Although some learners' errors are silenced to native speakers, others, even though they are systematic, may go unnoticed. For this reason, it is valuable for anyone interested in learner language to do a more thorough error analysis to try to identify all the systematic errors. This can help researchers understand the cognitive processes the learner is using and help teachers decide which might be target for correction. Researchers have worked up the following procedure for doing an error analysis, Quarter 1975. First, identify all the errors in a sample of learner language. For each error, what do you think the speaker intended to say and how they should have said it? For example, an English learner may say he make a goal. This is an error. However, what should the learner have said? There are at least two possible ways to reconstruct this error. First, he makes a goal. And second, he is making a goal. In this first step, in this first step of error analysis, remember that there may be more than one possible way to reconstruct a learner error. Teron and Swiftbin, 2009. Over another example from an English language learner. Learner, our school forced us to learn English because it's a trend. Here are three different possible reconstructions. A. Our school forced us to learn English because it was a trend. B. Our school required us to learn English because it was a popular language. C. Because everyone felt it was important, English was a requirement at our school. The way you reconstruct a learner error depends on what you think the intended message is. An intended complication is that any given learner trends may contain error at many levels at once: phonological, morphological, syntactic, and lexical. Finally, determine how systematic the error is. Does it occur several times? Or is it just a performance slip, a mistake? Even native speakers of a language make one-off mistake when they're tired of distracted. The next, what error analysis misses? Sorry. The second is explain the errors. Once you've identified systematic errors in your sample of learner language, think of what might have caused those errors. There are several possibilities. Some errors could be due to native language transfer, using a rule of patterns from the native language. Some could be developmental errors most learners make in learning this language, no matter what their native language. Induced errors may be due to the way a teacher or textbook present or explain a given form. Communication strategies may be used by the learner to get meaning across, even if he or she knows the form used is not correct. Salinger 1972 discusses this and other possible causes of systematic learner errors. Explaining errors in learner language isn't always straightforward. For example, sometimes an error may appear to have more than one cause, as Lightbound and Spada 2013 say. While error analysis has the advantage of describing what learners actually do, it does not always give us clear insight into why they do it. Okay, the next, what error analysis misses? Error analysis is a good first step, but it also can miss important features of learner language. First, in focusing only on errors, you may miss cases where the learner used the form correctly. For example, you may notice that a learner makes error in pronouncing a TL sound before consonant, but not notice that C is producing the sound correctly before vowels. The second thing an error analysis misses is avoidance. Schachter 1976 pointed out the learners can avoid using features of a TL that they know they have difficulty with. For example, you may see very few errors in relative clauses in a sample of English learner language, but then realize that because the learner simply isn't producing many relative clauses, correct or incorrect. Avoidance can lead to the absence of error, but absence of errors in this case does not mean that a learner has no problem with relative clauses. Finally, error analysis focuses only on accuracy. Accuracy is just one of three ways of the describing learner language: accuracy, complexity, and fluency. If teachers judge learner language only in terms of accuracy, the learner's development of complexity and fluency can suffer. See the section on complexity. Okay, now I will present about scope of error analysis. There are 5 points. The first is good English for the English. Learning a language is a process in which, like learning to swim, students are freed from mistake by getting feedback to make new attempts sequentially closer to the desired goal. Student mistakes can also provide evidence to researchers about how language is learned or acquired and what strategies or procedures students use in a language discovery. Corder 1967. Grammar teaching is important for learners, both of first and second grammar, and especially for those learning English as a second language. Linguists argue that grammar is the most important part of the language system. Therefore, to master the language, we must master grammar. Learners who do not master grammar often make sentences that are not in accordance with grammar ill form. The ill form sentences that are used by English learner are natural mistake experienced by language learner. However, their speech is still understandable. In order to understand the ill-formed speech of the English learner, the meaning of the context is used to find out the speaker's intention. In other words, context is included because ill-formed utterances also contain context that can help understand speech utterances. According to James, 1998, language error are irregularities that are made unintentionally, and this error cannot be corrected by the speaker himself due to the learner our ignorance. Language error can be defined as pieces of the language that are not successful. Although not deep enough, this definition is sufficient for the initial stage of this discussion. Error analysis is the process of determining the incidents, characteristics, causes, and consequences of the language that is unsuccessful. The main focus is on error and their analysis in the context of teaching and learning foreign and second language, at least 1997 distinguishes three types of learner's language error: omission error, misinformation, and misordering. The second is good English for the FL or ESL learner. The crux of the matter is that English in the SL setting has two conflicting roles. This should work in a way as a language for international communication and, on the other hand, especially where there is potential for diversity of local language. As a lingua franca, a local agent, and a marker of national identity. The third is the native speaker and the power dimension. There is a long tradition in teaching FL, applied linguistics, and pure linguistics that border on respect for native speakers. This respect for native speakers is well documented and evaluated in Alan Davies' book, 1991. In the chapters, especially 8 and 9, there are 12 defining characteristics of native speaker, and all of them are positive. In addition, there are also several experts who express their ideas about native speaker. May 1981 says native speakers are always right to understand and struggle. 1990 state we believe, like most linguists, the native speakers don't make mistake. Native speakers mostly speak their native language perfectly, but the author, Carl James, stated that he clearly made a mistake. They are the subject of intense psycholinguistic research. The fourth is the the incompleteness hypothesis. The error analysis hypothesis is that first language acquisition is similar to second language acquisition. This is based on the idea that learning is a creative process. The learner has an innate grammar, with the help of which he uses certain strategies for learning the language. The learner indirectly formulates involuntary hypotheses on the basis of a preliminary study of the second language. If the hypothesis is correct, it does not make mistake, and the hypothesis become a rule for the learner. If it causes an error, it corrects it based on more data. So errors play a positive role in the language learning process. The mistake made by learners of other languages can be grouped into two parts, receptive and expressive. Receptive errors are not visible, whereas expressive errors are always obvious. Expression can be spoken or written. Spoken or spontaneous expression do not make the study of error easy. Written or controlled expression are preferred for error analysis purpose. The five is other reference point for error analysis. There are 3 points. A, language change. B, language loss. And last but not least, C, defense in literature. I will explain about the language change. A, language change. Language change used to be thought of as a dual philological field of study, involving the parroting of sound change and vowel shift. The next B, language loss. Individuals can lose their language, native speaker, FL, or both. The cause can be pathological, as is the case when stroke victims lose their language, usually suddenly, or natural. The usual cause of natural loss is non-use, and so it makes sense to speak of forgetting a language. The last is C, deviance in literature. This is intentional degradations and special effect to make the language they use sound poetic, offers a useful typology of poetic degradation. That's all for me about error analysis and scope. Thank you for attention. I said Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.